Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and welcome to This Week in Mythic Plus. This week's affixes are Tyrannical, Raging, Storming, and Thundering. Storming and Thundering, the iconic flavor combo. And it's quite a good week for key pushing because Raging Tyrannical, it's a lot less lethal than Raging Fortified is, but Raging is still quite lethal. Raging Tyrannical trash mobs are still going to do more damage than base Fortified trash mobs are while they are raging. And so that is something you have to watch out for, especially if you're pulling bigger because it's a Tyrannical week, which, if you're pushing high keys, you kind of do need to do that. Storming is, on the other hand, an affix that if you're not playing in melee, it's not something you're really going to worry about too much. If you are a tank or a melee DPS, it can be kind of annoying. It's also one of the sleeper combos with Thundering, where the combination of Storming and Thundering can int your plans to clear the debuff with a few seconds to go. So especially if either you or the person you're planning to clear with is a melee DPS, consider clearing just 2 seconds earlier than you otherwise would have. If you are somebody who usually tries to milk it down to the 10-second mark or something on that debuff. Yeah, it's probably one of the better Tyran weeks, though, on the calendar for a lot of cases, especially if you have a Soothe, an Enrage Dispel for the Raging effect, and especially if you have an Evoker, because Evokers this week can talent Overawe, which gives you effectively, if you're using the Suppressing Roar on 5 enemies, removing an Enrage from 5 of them, turns it into a 20-second CD. If you're hitting 6 or more enemies and soothing each of them, then you have no cooldown on it as well. So yeah, Evokers can effectively AoE soothe like every pull, the Raging off, which is very, very good this week. So a huge week to be bringing either a Preservation or a Devastation Evoker if they're going to have that talented, and if they're going to use it well, they can pretty much neutralize the Raging affix entirely. And then if you're playing with something like All Ranged or something like that, then Storming is also negated by that, and bang, free week, right? Like that's affixes handled. Very different situation if you're in like a group without a Soothe or without somebody who's using Soothe, and with multiple melee DPS getting bounced around by Storming. In that case, the week can still be kind of tough. Storming on bosses also, it's a Storming Tyrannical week. There are some bosses where Storming is dangerous. I would recommend in a lot of cases, if you are the tank in particular and you're not in danger, you should be looking to soak the Storming Tornadoes that might put the rest of your group in danger, right? Anytime there's one that's lining up with mechanics, that's anything weird is happening, it can be a great idea to just go and soak the Tornadoes while you can. Similarly, if you're a DPS player and you have cooldowns that let you soak Storming as well, like DKs can pop, they can pop Death's Advance, they can walk through some Storming Tornadoes. Yeah, you still take the damage. You could even defensive or death strike through the damage if you're a little bit worried. But doing that, especially in spots where there are mechanics going on that might cause whoever the Storming hits that's not you to get in some kind of trouble, can be a really good proactive play against the affix. But the other option of just dodging them for yourself and trusting the rest of your group to dodge them is also fine, and sometimes what you have to do. There's something to sometimes look out for, though, is opportunities to soak Storming and help your group that way. Other than that, you're just looking at Tyrannical being active in most dungeons as the hardest part. There are a lot of dungeons like Ruby Life Pools that have multiple difficult bosses, so single target builds, single target, making small concessions towards single target away from AoE this week can be really valuable, making sure you're definitely not playing specs that are fully in on AoE and that sacrifice huge amounts of their single target for it. Of course, it's still M+, you still want to be in a M+, mostly AoE build usually, but especially if you're going to be pulling small, if you're only going to be pulling 1 pack at a time, it can be really valuable to make sure that you're playing mostly, like you're only giving up a few of the smallest single target gains for a few of the biggest AoE gains this week. Okay, so there have been some dungeon nerfs as well that have landed on Azure Vault. Azure Vault has taken a few mechanical nerfs and also a timer nerf of 90 seconds, so this can be a great dungeon to go visit and collect your, whatever score the nerfs make easy for you to get. Maybe a key level, maybe 2 easier this week than it was last Tyrannical week, so that'll be nice. Other dungeons, I would say the ones where you're going to be under the most time pressure this week are Algathar Academy, and Temple of the Jade Serpent. These are dungeons that have fairly tight timers and fairly tough bosses, and 4 of them. And those are ones where you probably are still going to be in some need of pulling multiple packs at once, depending on how you attack those dungeons. Obviously, Shadow Moon, Court of Stars are going to be quite free on the timer. Halls of Valor, also a dungeon where, yeah, you're probably going to be looking at combining some pulls, obviously not as aggressively as this route here, but, doing something bigger than, 5, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, or 3, 3, 2, 3, 3, right? Like some kind of sizing that's a little bit bigger than that is probably necessary to time a Halls of Valor if you're playing at a level where the timer is at all relevant. But it's not something that's likely to be too dangerous in here. Raging, you do want to look out for the raging wargs as well, murdering your tank. If you're pulling the warg area, there's a couple of different ways you can do wargs. One is to just fight them straight up and have your ranged DPS tanking or your ranged players tanking the leaps, but that's kind of sketchy. That's a lot of damage, and when raging, it's potentially one-shotty even on a fairly low-key level. Your ranged can keep moving. If your ranged are moving while you're pulling this, then they're not going to actually get hit if they're far enough away from these wargs, because there's a travel time. So that can be a way to do it as well, especially if you have just one ranged DPS or one ranged player. They can just keep moving and mitigate it that way. The other option is to stand on either a little pillar that's over here or on one of the little rocks after you kill Fenrir. That's just outside of the cave, I guess maybe more like right here. And you can stand on that little rock, fight the wargs, and as long as all of your ranged players are standing on one of those rocks, the wargs won't jump, and that way that fight is only tank damage instead of quite lethal group-wide damage. Okay, other than that, pretty good week. Yeah, again, just make sure that you're doing a couple of pulls that aren't just one pack at a time, and you'll be able to time keys at a fairly high level this week, especially if you have a lot of damage, especially if you have a lot of single target damage. But like in Knocked, for instance, you can do this whole area one pull at a time, you can do this whole area one pull at a time, and the only place where you probably need to start doing some double pulls is like this area. And if you do, an average of 1.5 pulls per pack here, 1.5 packs per pull here, then I think the timer should be fairly generous in this dungeon, so yeah, look for opportunities to do that. Bloodlust this week should generally be spent on bosses, although there are some dungeons where sending an early lust on trash is often a good idea as well. Knock is a good choice for that. You can still just lust this pull. You do want to have lust for Raging Tempest, even post-nerf. That makes a lot of sense. And then lusting one or potentially even both if you're going fast of these last 2 bosses. You can activate these 2 kind of early as well, lust them, and then clear out the rest of the trash in this area for your either 100 or 94% count, and then get to 100 off of these 2, or skip them if you want. Skipping these mobs, if you've never done this, is something you can do with somebody with Invis, Shadow Meld, or Vanish. They pull the mobs, you pull the boss, they vanish or Invis or Meld, and then these mobs will be out of combat with you, and you can avoid fighting them. Okay, so another dungeon where you may be interested in an early lust is Court of Stars. There's a few different ways that you can approach Court of Stars lusts, but generally this first boss is not too deadly, and also you reach it at around like the 6 or 7 minute mark often as well, and so hitting the lust that late can make it fairly tough to get 3 lusts in this dungeon. So instead, you can send lust on like a first trash pull, so doing something like this guard, bringing it upstairs with you, and fighting it with like all of this stuff can be a great way to get lust on cooldown early. There are people as well, you can go down to the docks early, although one of the best ways to do this dungeon for time is to instead pull through, kill this first boss, and then send your healer on an adventure to go through and open the door. And as soon as they get down in this area, this doorway opens and these constructs go away. And so while your healer is doing that after you kill the first boss, everybody else in your group can turn around, run back this way, and fight all of these mobs that don't do anything. Do a bunch of frontals, and there's one caster that you have to kick here. And other than that, there's not anything that happens on this pull, and it can be a good way to get quite a bit of count while also opening up this skip. Opening up this door is really nice because this pack in particular is quite slow and deadly without being, it's kind of inefficient and annoying. And then you open up this side here, which is a lot safer to start fighting in usually than than this side, and has quite a few of the buffs or enforcer summoning replacement things like the wounded person and the bizarre goods and the mining statue. So this can be a good way to do this dungeon if you're in a coordinated group. If you're in a less coordinated group this week, if you're just pugging, just walk through the dungeon nice and slow, right? Either sap or imprison this guy, or bring him up with you and do something like this, and then like this by itself and deactivate the thing, and then like this, right? And then like this after CCing or gripping in and like killing this thing, and this, and then either skip this house to the side if you can all walk past it, or if it just accidentally pulls, just focus these down because these things are deadly. Then you do like this, right? And you're just kind of walking forward through the dungeon in a nice safe line, pull these things up onto this thing, do these things nice and easy, nice and safe, walking your way through the dungeon. Grab some imps when you can, when you have a bunch of cooldowns, when you have a bunch of stops for them, fight an enforcer afterwards that you're just single targeting for a while if it's over there. And you just kind of keep working your way through this area nice and safely. Do not pull this pack. Do not pull this pack. You can pull any other packs that you want, though, that are in your way. Get the buffs that you can. Get the bosses spawned. Fight in safe areas. Be careful to not fight where enforcers might respawn after you've killed the previous one. 20 seconds later, the next one spawns, and it can get you if you're not careful. And as long as you do that this week, Quarter Stars is a free timer. But yeah, try to avoid pulling these two packs. These two packs, I think, are the ones that cause the most wipes for people when they get pulled. So, anyways, that's my little This Week in Mythic Plus video. Went on a couple of tangents on this one, but hopefully they were somewhat helpful to somebody. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Good luck in your keys this week. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.